Right.
The problem is the Geneva Convention doesn't cover this. The Uniform Code of Military Justice doesn't support this. Said it out loud. They want control of Venezuela's reserves. Violation of Section 18. .3.2.1 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which states as its principal example of following an unlawful order, firing upon shipwrecked mariners
I know.
as a war crime.
I
Not
read that
joking, it's
yesterday.
literally in print.
Yep.
And this comes from a Nazi incident in World War II where they gunned down all of the survivors of a ship because they didn't want to be detected in that part of the world. We executed those Nazi commanders of that submarine.
On the line with us, our buddy Malcolm Nance, the U.S. intelligence expert, author of multiple books, including They Want to Kill Americans, previously The Plot to Destroy Democracy. He's also got a must-read Substack newsletter at malcolmnance.substack.com. And it's Malcolm Nance on Blue Sky, MALCOLMNANCE. Malcolm, welcome back to the program. It's been too long since we've talked.
Well, always interesting, and it's not like anything's going on this week.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I wanted to get your take on some of these things, not just because I respect your opinion, but because I know you're also very well informed and in some ways wired into some of the communities and groups that would have access to insights that I lack. And so let's start with Venezuela. We have this what looks like an impending war. I mean, this is so looks to me like they're preparing for war. What's going on down there and why?
Well, first off, I think you're absolutely right. I've been predicting war since September, principally because today Donald Trump had a cabinet meeting. And this cabinet meeting was supposed to be about economics. But this would give him the opportunity to have all his secretaries in, all of his major principal players in, to where he could forge an all-of-government response to what's coming. As you see, we are now in the middle of this furor over Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, carrying out an operation in which he murdered 2 shipwrecked individuals. And I'm saying this as a career Navy person from a century-long Navy family. We understand that giving an illegal order like that may look interesting and sexy to his base, but it is exactly that, is an illegal order. Now, what this proves is this is the culmination of a lot of activities we've been seeing. 83 civilians were killed by the United States using, rockets or drone-launched weapons or off AC-130 gunships. And Tom, I don't know whether you've read that Washington Post article, and I just finished a good Substack about it. But as I read it as a professional, people mistook that SEAL Team 6 was actually running this operation. The former commander of SEAL Team 6, Admiral Bradley, was doing that. But the article said, and Hegseth said, that they saw these vessels being filled. They knew who was on them. They knew how many individuals were there. They knew where they were going. They knew what they were doing. This is SEAL Team 6's bailiwick, but only if they are on the ground in Venezuela, watching these drug craft be filled at their clandestine marinas that are deep inside the jungles. And if that sounds familiar, that's the premise and plot of Tom Clancy's A Clear and Present Danger, which apparently is the policy document for what we are doing in Venezuela.
Amazing. And Malcolm, doesn't it make sense that if Hegseth was telling the truth, we know who these guys are, we know their names, we know where they came, that they would release that information to back up their claim?
Well, it's interesting because now that they have designated every individual who takes part in illicit drug trafficking in South America as terrorists and associated with either the Tren de Aragua gang, which is really just a continuing criminal organization, right? A CCE, continuing criminal enterprise. They really don't have any justification for terrorism. The problem is that they are interpreting that drugs The same war on drugs that we've been dealing with. Any drug coming from South America is considered a weapon system, and that these boats are carrying lethal payloads in which, as they work their way across the United States border and onto our streets, are exploding by killing Americans through the misuse of these drugs. That's their interpretation of who we are fighting, and they are calling every one of them a combatant in justifying the killing of these individuals. Right. The problem is the Geneva Convention doesn't cover this. The Uniform Code of Military Justice doesn't support this. The international law of sea, the sea treaties don't support any of this as well. So he is making up a justification for Donald Trump in order to carry out an operation that appears to be oriented to knocking down the Maduro regime and gaining control of the world's largest oil reserves.
Yeah, which is the bottom line here, don't you think?
Yes, it absolutely is.
Yeah.
Because they have said it out loud that they want control of Venezuela's reserves. And, how the peace president, who never has wars, is going to get a Nobel Prize after publicly stating he wanted to ethnically cleanse Gaza of 2.2 million Palestinians, and now preparing to do what is possibly already started, a clandestine special operation off of Venezuela. And one more note, Tom. This operation down in the Caribbean is not being conducted by U.S. Southern Command, the theater commanders of Admiral Horsley, the guy who recently resigned. It's being conducted under the auspices of the U.S. Special Operations Command, including the control of all of those ships and the aircraft carrier.
And what's the significance of that?
It has never been done before. I mean, it is insane.
What is Special Operations Command? I knew that there were these commands, CENTCOM and what, that were regional, but I didn't realize there was a quote Special Operations Command. What is it? What does it do?
Oh yeah, well, we've had a Special Operations Command since the 1980s. After the Iranian disaster, but it is a independent warfare command which controls all of the resources of the U.S. Special Operations. That's the SEALs, the Army Special Forces, Joint Special Operations Command, Air Force Special Operations Command, which are the aircraft that are sinking these boats, by the way. AC-130J gunships, the Ghost Rider gunships, and, Marine Corps Special Operations. They are a independent branch of the armed forces in the Department of Defense. However, the regional commander who is responsible for everything from Key West down to Antarctica is the U.S. Southern Command, and it was led by a 4-star admiral or a 4-star general. And he normally has control of any unit or resource that comes into that theater. Trump has carved out Venezuela for control under, and these boats, attacking these boats, under the U.S. Special Operations Command, and sidelining the Navy admiral who would be responsible for controlling those ships, aircraft, and resources.
Oh, that's interesting.
Unprecedented. Never happened before.
Yeah, which adds to the speculation that this is leading to war. But it also suggests that Admiral Horsley did not resign his post because of the illegal blowing up of these boats and the people in them.
Well, it's a possibility. I mean, look, I'm an old sailor. I've been around circumstances where people said some questionable things. Right. Even though he is the theater commander, he's responsible for the entire region. He meets all of these admirals, generals, presidents of all of these countries as the principal military representative of the United States down there. But if he were to see something as blatant as the violation of Section 18.3.2.1 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which states as its principal example of following an unlawful order, firing upon shipwrecked mariners as a war crime. Not joking, it's literally in print.
Yep.
And this comes from a Nazi incident in World War II where they gunned down all of the survivors of a ship because they didn't want to be detected in that part of the world. We executed those Nazi commanders of that submarine that did this as part of the as part of the war crimes.
Yeah, we also executed Japanese for similar things.
Absolutely.
I've got about I don't know 2.5 minutes here, I think, before I hit a hard break. I wanted to get into what's going on with Ukraine. It sure looks to me like Steve Witkoff and Donald Trump and their boys, whose investment company received a whole pile of money from, was it UAE or Qatar very recently, that they are looking at business opportunities in Russia if they can just get Zelensky to STFU.
Yeah, this has been on the table since day one. We've heard this Witkoff make the statement that, there's a lot of opportunity there by sending Kirill Dmitriev, Russia sending Kirill Dmitriev, a person who was deeply steeped in the Trump-Russia scandal, to come and be the face-to-face representative for Witkoff. Witkoff is a real estate broker. That's why Trump likes him. This is the guy who wants 25 kilometers of Gaza, right, to turn into luxury resorts. He views Ukraine as a real estate deal, land to be sold off and negotiated, whereas Ukraine will get no input on it. And he is madly in love with President Putin. They are looking at, I have underestimated, there's $500 billion of sanctioned cash inside Russia. The New York Times reports that they think that they can make, this is the Trump team and Trump associates, up to $2 trillion off of deals in Russia. This is straight up money-grubbing treason. I say this as an intelligence professional, not as a partisan. Any other person in the United States who ever did this, this is the single most corrupt act that has ever happened in American history.
What astonishes me, Malcolm, in the minute we have left, is that the U.S. media doesn't seem to understand this. How do we explain this in a way that they get it?
Well, they understand. They just, the way the Washington Post was told not to report stories that are negative about Donald Trump. They reported one that was negative about Hegseth by leaving Trump out of it. But, there's eyes to be onto newspapers if people actually engage in journalism. Yeah. There are everybody who would have been considered a Murrow in the United States news media is now independent and on Substack with me, right? Yep. The Jim Acostas, the Joy Reeds, Katie Couric. Yep. They are not in mainstream media. Is not here to tell the story. People don't read the way that they used to, and they are looking for favor from their king, and they don't want displeasure from the king. But this is how Putin gained control of Russian media when he took over. Same with Viktor Orban. They now control the narrative, but the problem is the country refuses to accept that narrative.
Yeah, so far. Yes, and there's great hope for that. The great Malcolm Nance.
I listen to your show every day to make sure of that.
Well, thank you, Malcolm. Check out Malcolm's newsletter over at Substack and malcolmnance.substack.com. It is great. It's free. Malcolm, thanks again.